We're going to talk about Ted Turner. He has died. He is the guy that founded CNN. He was also the former husband of Jane Fonda. He was 87 years old. Chris Bumbray is the editor-in-chief of JoeBlow.com and a film critic for CTV News. He joins us on the line. Good afternoon, Chris.
Hey, Sue.
So what's your reaction to the death of Ted Turner?
I mean, not unexpected, because he had actually been suffering from Lewy body dementia for the last couple of years. I actually saw him in the Jane Fonda documentary not too long ago. And, he did seem like he was kind of getting on in years. Mm-hmm. But, what a legacy he leaves behind. I was just thinking about it today. I mean, if you think about it, before Ted Turner, the 24-hour news cycle was just something that didn't exist, right? People, if they wanted to watch the news, they'd have to wait for their evening news at 6 o'clock or, maybe the main news at like 10 o'clock at night. It wasn't like it is now where you could just turn it to any station and everything is covered in real time as it's happening. He was the first one to really come up with that concept. It was in 1980. People thought he was crazy because, believe it or not, they actually thought that there wouldn't be enough news to fill the 24-hour news cycle, to fill the day. Yeah. We know a little bit differently now. But I mean, the fact that he started a 24-hour news network gave birth to so much stuff. I mean, not only has there been so many imitators, but also the rise of pundits and opinion newsmakers and people giving their opinions when they read the news. Back then you had anchormen like, Ted Koppel.
Yeah, Walter Cronkite.
Yeah, exactly. Who would just, they would present the news, they would read the news, and that was literally their job, just reading the news. It's just not like it is now. And I mean, even, when you see news influencers on YouTube, I mean, they all have the roots in some ways in CNN and with Ted Turner.
Yeah. It's always interesting to me when somebody is that much of a game changer. I mean, he really did change, the entire way that broadcast media, certainly broadcast news is done. But to your point, it even goes wider than that. And so what was it about him? What was he like as a person, and how did he manage to, be so, have so much chutzpah?
Well, yeah, that was the thing. He was very brash, right? And he had a real larger-than-life personality. And he would often put his foot in his mouth and get into trouble. I mean, his nickname was the Mouth of the South. That was how crazy he was. But he had a lot of personality, and he had a lot of a lot of confidence, that's for sure. I mean, and he would be willing to take these huge gambles. I mean, he also was the guy who bought MGM in 1985 and sold it something like a couple of days later. But, he also, besides CNN, he had a whole other empire. I mean, he owned the Atlanta Braves and the Atlanta Hawks. He owned all the super stations, TBS, TNT, the Cartoon Network, and my own favorite, Turner Classic Movies. And not everything that he did was great either. I mean, one of the things that has always bothered me as a film fan was that Ted Turner was the guy who invented colorization of old black and white movies.
Oh, no.
And everybody hated that. And he eventually did see the error of his ways and actually created Turner Classic Movies as a way to preserve classic films, because he was a film fan and he felt bad for his work colorizing things. And I think that legacy in some ways is in a lot of danger now, because CNN and TCM, they were all sold to Warner Discovery, and now Warner Discovery is all going to Paramount. So it's good. All of these things are in jeopardy. I mean, even CNN, I was reading the other day that Barry Diller wants to buy it. It's everything is super imperiled now, but he built this multimedia empire that is just unlike anything that had ever been done at that point, and he really set the trend, I think, for all those who were to follow.
And I mean, I mentioned in the intro that he was the husband of Jane Fonda. Of course, he married, 3 times or something. He's got 5 children. But I remember those years, they were really the ultimate, power couple.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, the thing is, she was, in her own way, she's, a huge movie star, but also, she was an entrepreneur.
An activist,
right?
also.
And an activist. And they both were. That was the thing. He was an activist, too. One of the things is he donated $1 billion to the United Nations and funded the United Nations Foundation. And he was also one of the biggest private landowners in the U.S. And one of the things that he always did was that he was a real conservationist, and he always warned about global warming, which is a thing that all the other multi-billionaires or even trillionaires wouldn't really necessarily concern themselves with. They didn't really care about the world that they left behind. Ted Turner did. And even Jane Fonda herself talked about it in her documentary, that was one of the things that drew her to him, was that not only was he a powerful person, but he was somebody who really did want to leave the world in a better state than long after he had passed away. So, there's a lot to admire about him, I think.
The United Nations thing was interesting, though, because I can remember it at the time. I mean, the U.S. was really kind of in a shameful position, according to a lot of people around the world, right? I mean, it had huge debts and it hadn't paid their, whatever, let's call them fees. It hadn't paid their part for, I don't know, decades. And then he came in and basically bailed them out. So I guess he was also quite political.
He was, but the thing is, he wasn't the kind of guy, though, who either would go out and endorse a candidate like that, either, though. He wasn't, I don't think
he just threw his money around.
No, and he didn't want to be seen as a kingmaker, even though he probably was behind the scenes. But, I mean, just the fact that he invented CNN, though, I mean, that tells you everything that you need to know. I do believe he was a Democrat, but, like I said, though, the fact that CNN setting the kind of tone that it did and the idea of a 24-hour news cycle, I mean, can you imagine a world where people just had to wait for the news for an hour at 6 o'clock at night? And that would be, the ultimate gatekeeper of news, right? You'd only be able to see what would make that hour or what would make your local newspaper. Whereas the 24-hour news cycle, any story would be covered and every story would be covered.
Yeah. So, I mean, sometimes to a fault, for sure.
Yes, I would agree with that 100%. Sometimes to a fault. And one could also argue that CNN and all of its competitors, particularly Fox News, really led to the politicization of news, especially along party lines, which isn't necessarily a good thing either, because it really has kind of fueled division in a lot of ways. But I don't think that Ted Turner necessarily can be blamed for that.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you read about the sort of early days, because it does seem to have been a really idealistic enterprise. Apparently the journalists weren't paid that much. I mean, that probably hasn't changed, but, like, hey, come, it's really cool job for no money. But, and everybody sort of predicted it would fail.
Yeah, and they did. People really did think that he was crazy. I mean, just the idea that people didn't think that there was going to be enough news to fill a 24-hour news cycle is wild. But then if you think of the huge breaking news stories that CNN kind of was right on the ground for. I mean, particularly I think the first Iraq War. I remember they made a movie about it, Live from Baghdad, with Michael Keaton, actually, and they were the first station that was on the ground for the whole thing. And they would document things in real time. I mean, for me, even to this day, if breaking news is happening, the CNN is often the place that you think first to look, especially if it's in the U.S. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember, of 9/11, I remember seeing that live on CNN. I think a lot of us did. It is just this juggernaut, and it's hard to imagine the world without it.
So, I mean, you mentioned legacy. What do you think his legacy will be?
I think CNN, 100%. I think the fact that he was the 24-hour news cycle, I think that is something that we can 100% almost 100% attribute to Ted Turner. I think that really is the thing that he leaves behind, for better or worse. But I also think that, he was a great showman, and he was a really colorful guy, and he had personality that I think a lot of the new oligarchs or billionaires or trillionaires don't necessarily have. I think people did actually like Ted Turner. Yeah, he was brash and he was mouthy, but I think that's the thing that people really enjoyed about him.
Yeah, he's one of those larger-than-life characters.
He was a cowboy.
Yeah. And married to Jane Fonda.
I know, and I mean that makes him a couple points cooler than anybody else.
Definitely a bit cooler. Thanks so much, Chris. Great talking to you.
My pleasure. Thank
you.
The newest tracks. Let's go. New music. And the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
'Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice. Playing now.
iHeart New Music. Your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers.
I think we need something new.
Discover iHeart New Music. Always fresh, always first. Stream now on the free iHeartRadio app.